The rain didn't fall. It hammered against the pavement like it was trying to nail the city shut. I stepped under the yellow police tape, the collar of my trench coat turned up against the deluge, but the dampness had already seeped into my bones. Inside the warehouse, the air was thick with the smell of turpentine, old wood, and the unmistakable copper tang of fresh blood. The victim was Arthur Patterson. He was sprawled across a workbench, his limbs arranged with a disturbing geometric precision. This wasn't a robbery. Robbers are messy. This was a statement. The boys in blue, led by Lieutenant Davis, were already calling it a burglary gone south. They saw a dead man in a restoration workshop. I saw a man who had been dismantled and put back together, wrong. Case 0111, The Shattered Varnish, written by the city, transcribed by yours truly, Detective Maverick Hughes. The date was October 14th, 11:42 p.m. The address? A converted loft in the Meatpacking District, where the rats are big enough to pay rent. It started 6 hours earlier. My office door creaked open, admitting the scent of expensive perfume and trouble. Her name was Serenity Vance. She had the kind of blonde hair that catches the light even in a dim room and eyes that looked like they'd seen the end of the world and found it boring. She was shivering, clutching a mink coat that cost more than my car. "They say you find things, Mr. Hughes," she whispered, her voice trembling just enough to be convincing. "I need you to find my brother before he hurts someone." She dropped a thick envelope on my desk. Cash, crisp, unsequential hundreds. She told me Arthur was an art restorer who had gotten involved with the wrong crowd. She claimed he was paranoid, talking about fixing people. I didn't buy the sisterly concern. Her eyes were too dry, her grip on her purse too tight. But I bought the cash. The rent was due, and my bottle of rye was running on fumes. My office door doesn't open for virtue. It opens for desperation and the currency that accompanies it. Back at the crime scene, I ignored Davis and his team flashing cameras at the walls. I looked at the details. Arthur hadn't just been killed, he had been worked on. There were traces of gold dust in the wounds. Kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold. Someone treated Arthur like a cracked vase that needed a new seam. The police saw a corpse. I saw a project. This wasn't about art. It was about perfection. The killer didn't just want Arthur dead, he wanted him fixed. And looking at the gruesome display, I knew Serenity Vance had left out the most important part of the story. She wasn't trying to save her brother. She was trying to erase him. You're listening to the Uncensored File, the version where the bad guys don't always wear black hats, and the good guys are just too broke to quit. Pay attention to the shadows in the corners. That's where the truth lives. That's where I work. I sat in the dark of my office, the neon sign from the bar across the street blinking a rhythmic red light across my desk. I poured 3 fingers of cheap bourbon into a dirty glass. It burned going down, just the way I like it. A reminder that I'm still alive in a city dead set on killing me. I didn't trust Serenity Vance. I trust gravity and the bottom of a bottle. Everything else is negotiable. She said Arthur was erratic. The police said Arthur was a victim of random violence, but the evidence screaming in silence told a different story. I went back to the workshop after the cops cleared out. They took the body, but they left the ghosts. I found it kicked under a heavy oak cabinet, a ledger. Not an accounting book for taxes, but a log of favors. Arthur Patterson wasn't just restoring 18th century oil paintings. He was restoring reputations. The names in the book, Brooks, Campbell, Rodriguez, were high society types with dirty laundry. Arthur fixed their problems. He made evidence disappear, doctored documents, and smoothed over the cracks in their public personas. But the last entry wasn't a client. It was a name, Julian Black. I tracked Black to a basement studio in the garment district. The place smelled of chemical solvents and obsession. Julian wasn't a big guy, but he had hands that looked like they could crush a stone or cradle a bird. He was a rival restorer, a man known for miracles. "You're asking the wrong questions, Detective," Black said, not even looking up from the canvas he was scraping. Arthur was a butcher. He covered up the rot. I cut it out. The confrontation was short. I pushed him. He swung a mallet. I dodged, and he put a hole in the plaster wall that would cost his deposit. It wasn't a fight for survival. It was a punctuation mark in a sentence we both knew the ending to. Black wasn't the killer. He was too angry, too loud. The killer was clinical. The psychology of this crime wasn't rage, it was utility. Arthur Patterson was a tool that had stopped working efficiently. In this town, when a tool breaks, you don't fix it, you discard it. But the killer had a sick sense of irony. They used Arthur's own method against him. I went back to the ledger. I held the page up to the light. The handwriting changed on the last few pages. It wasn't Arthur's scrawl anymore. It was elegant, precise. The clues were there, the gold dust, the specific knot used to bind his hands, the lack of struggle. Arthur knew his killer. He probably let them in. The realization hit me like a hangover. Serenity Vance wasn't Arthur's sister. The background check I finally ran confirmed it. She was his partner, not in business, but in the blackmail scheme. And Arthur had developed a conscience, or maybe just got too greedy. He was the broken piece she needed to restore to silence. The truth in this line of work is a heavy coat. You wear it, but it drags you down. It makes you slower, colder. I knew who did it. Now I just had to prove it before she decided I was another crack in her porcelain life that needed filling. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and black, reflecting the hollow city lights. I met Serenity Vance at the designated spot, an abandoned shipyard where the silence was loud enough to hear a pin drop. She was waiting by her silver convertible, smoking a cigarette with that same practiced elegance. "Did you find him, Mr. Hughes?" she asked, blowing smoke into the damp air. "I found him," I said, tossing the ledger onto the hood of her car. "And I found the artist." Her expression didn't change, but her eyes hardened. The mask slipped, just for a second. I laid it out for her. The gold dust found in her purse when she opened it in my office. Trace amounts, sure, but enough for a lab. The way Arthur was posed, mimicking a painting she had in her penthouse, the Martyrdom of Saint Sebastian. It was her masterpiece. She thought Arthur was weak, a broken thing that threatened the integrity of their operation, so she fixed him. "He was going to the police, Maverick," she said, her voice dropping the tremble, becoming cold steel. "He was a crack in the foundation. You don't leave cracks, you fill them." She reached for the pistol in her glove compartment, but I was faster. I didn't shoot. I just kicked the door shut on her hand. The scream that followed wasn't elegant. It was raw, ugly, human. The police arrived minutes later, Lieutenant Davis looking smug, taking the credit I hand-delivered. The modus operandi was classic narcissism wrapped in aesthetic delusion. Serenity didn't see herself as a murderer. She saw herself as a curator of her own life. She removed the unsightly elements. It's a common motivation in this town, the desperate need to maintain a veneer of perfection while the soul rots underneath. Serenity went away in cuffs, screaming that I had ruined everything. Maybe I did. The case is closed, but the ledger burned in a barrel before the cops got there. Some secrets are too heavy even for the police file. Arthur is dead. Serenity is gone. And the high society names in that book sleep soundly tonight, knowing their sins turned to ash. Telling you this, it's like picking a scab. It bleeds, it stings, but you have to let the air get to it. You listen to these tapes thinking you understand the darkness, but you're just tourists. I live here. The phone is ringing. It's 3 a.m. It's never good news at 3 a.m. Probably another husband who thinks his wife is cheating, or a mother looking for a son who doesn't want to be found. The cycle restarts. For this office to stay open, for the bourbon to stay in the drawer, and for me to keep wading through the muck so you don't have to, I need you to keep listening. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. Tell me who you think is guilty in your own life. Share this with someone who trusts too easily. The bottle is empty. The rain is starting again. Get out of here. Go home to your warm beds and pretend the world makes sense. I have work to do.